A very warm welcome to you, and thank you so much for joining our Homeopathy 24/7 podcast. We are going to be speaking to an array of international guests who will share their knowledge and experiences of homeopathy with you. We will discuss all types of subjects such as remedies, symptoms, and stories of health. No matter where you are with your homeopathic journey, we aim to inspire you on your quest to natural health and living. The podcast is brought to you by Mary Greensmith, the founder of Homeopathy 24/7, which is a global platform connecting you with a homeopath wherever you are in the world, 24 hours a day. So let's get started with today's chat. Please welcome Mary Greensmith.
Hello, welcome. Lovely to see you all. Thank you so much for joining us. And today I have Anna Bihari with me. Welcome, Anna. It's so lovely to see you.
Thank you, Mary. So lovely to see you too. And I'm really excited to be here.
Now, of course, you are one of our homeopaths in Homeopathy 24/7, and you also answer questions in the Ask a Homeopathy group, and you have your own group as well for PANS and PANDAS. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, I'm actually in two Facebook groups that were both funded by homeopaths who are working at Homeopathy 24/7 for acute consultations. One is the PANS PANDAS support group, and the other one is the Detoxing with Homeopathy group.
Okay.
And yes, PANS PANDAS group, they are pediatric conditions, they are autoimmune conditions. PANS stands for Pediatric Acute-Onset Neuropsychiatric Syndrome, and PANDAS stands for Pediatric Autoimmune Neuropsychiatric Disorder Associated with strep infections. So it's a bit of a mouthful.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And I would say that the adult equivalent would probably be autoimmune encephalitis. But I noticed through the group that there are more and more adults asking questions as well and self-diagnosing with PANS and PANDAS. So it looks like even though it's a pediatric condition, adults are also feeling like that diagnosis fits them the best.
So tell me, what sort of symptoms are people coming to you and talking about when they come and find you?
I would say that the most common symptoms with PANS and PANDAS are OCD and rage.
Okay.
So children seem to go through phases of OCD and phases of rage. I would say actually OCD is an everyday kind of thing, and then rage comes and goes when they get triggered.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we see quite a lot of these symptoms with neurodiversity and autism and things like that as well, and maybe in some cases ADHD. So just tell me a little bit about what happens in mainstream medicine if somebody has got behavioural issues or they see these kind of symptoms evolving.
Very often they are put on mental health drugs. For example, with ADHD, you have Ritalin, which may or may not be helpful in different doses for different children, but it's definitely something that, we should think more about the long-term effects of it. And I feel like that is missing in the medical community a little bit, even today. So PANS and PANDAS often gets mistaken to these conditions like ADHD or autism, but it can also be that someone, fits all of those diagnoses. And the beautiful thing about homeopathy is that we don't necessarily need a set diagnosis to be able to help people. We simply treat the symptoms, and whether those symptoms fit more in the ADHD category or more in the PANS and PANDAS or autism category, it doesn't really matter to us. But they can be really helpful for parents, when they're looking for answers and other alternatives to be used alongside homeopathy. to have those diagnoses and to have those categories. With PANS and PANDAS, one very important thing to mention is that sometimes drugs can be helpful at certain parts of the treatment, like antibiotics. If a child is put on antibiotics early on, they might not develop PANS and PANDAS symptoms or might not develop them as severely. But again, I feel like further research is needed about the long-term side effects of these drugs. Does
Yeah.
that answer the question? Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's just understanding why people, what their first port of call is, what is available for them in other areas of health, and why then they would choose to find alternative or complementary medicines like homeopathy. And we know that homeopathy works in a very, very different way. But can you just explain why somebody might have gone down the mainstream medicine route and decided, well, actually, I need something different, or I need something that's working in a different way?
Well, I think most people would go down that route initially.
Yes.
And again, a diagnosis can be helpful, antibiotics can be helpful, but they might not help with all of the symptoms. And it might be that the symptoms are helped temporarily, but then they come back and sometimes come back with a vengeance. So then people start to look for other alternatives like homeopathy. And homeopathy is really good at treating the root cause. So that's also why I'm saying a diagnosis can be helpful, test can be helpful, because once we know, okay, this problem is originating, let's say, from a strep infection, then we might use strep in potency, and that might help in that particular case. But I think we can always dig a bit deeper with root causes, because, for example, PANS and PANDAS is essentially caused by many different things. But I think the underlying theme is some kind of immunocompromised state.
Yes.
Immune system is not operating efficiently enough to help the kids through all these toxins that are in the environment, all the pharmaceuticals, and all the inherited problems, such as, we often talk on this podcast about miasms. So there can be inherited disease patterns that are just lying dormant for a while until a strep infection or some other kind of infection comes along, and then the kids develop symptoms.
So what you're actually saying there is that somebody might have inherited a particular weakness that they don't know about, that there isn't apparent in their general health. And then when there are a set of circumstances, such as a particular infection going around, it stimulates and activates a different result than expected.
Yes, and we also call this susceptibility in homeopathy, don't we? Yeah, so we are susceptible to different things as different people, and you can never know when you develop symptoms. And that's not something that I think we should be fearful of. It's just something that sparks curiosity, mostly, and a bit of fear, obviously. But I think if we treat it with curiosity, then we are further along on the path.
I think that's a really nice way actually to look at homeopathy, because we are looking at, well, why is that person allergic to milk, and why is that person reacting differently if they have a strep infection? So just that curiosity is a really nice word to explain how we are exploring the whole health history, the whole way that people react emotionally and physically to their environment. And of course, that is going to give you the pieces of the jigsaw that you're going to be putting together.
Yes, exactly. It's just such a fascinating subject. Health, disease,
Yes.
homeopathy. Yeah.
Yeah, environment, and what amazes me is that people can have the same parents, the same upbringing, the same environment, and yet be totally different,
Yeah.
and react totally differently, to things around them. So, you mentioned there about inherited susceptibility, and that being triggered. And what we're generally saying is that when you start thinking about the possibility of using homeopathy, it is going to start opening a whole lot of questions for you, isn't it?
Yes, it's constantly doing that. And if you're working as a homeopath, you're constantly reading articles, blogs, buying books,
Mm.
doing courses, lots of CPD training. Yeah, it's just a never-ending story.
Yes, yes. And of course the people that we talk to bring so much information, don't we? So let's talk about what happens when somebody comes to you and they start asking you questions. Well, okay, my child has got OCD. This is what's happening. Where does it go from there? What else do you ask?
I ask about everything, really. We take a very thorough health history.
Hmm.
And what I really like to do personally, it's my favorite thing to do as a homeopath, is draw up a timeline.
Okay.
So what happened around their birth, um, even during conception, can be relevant sometimes. We usually don't go into that first time,
Okay.
but second or session, we definitely do. But birth, I always ask about first consultation. Um, I obviously ask about, if they are school age and their performance at school, their daily routine, how they are dealing with it, how has it changed since they developed symptoms or their symptoms worsened. Um, yeah, their poo, their pee,
Ah,
if they are thirsty, if they are hungry, what kind of foods they are craving, what kind of foods they have aversion to, and what are their trigger foods. Because a lot of times in PANS and PANDAS cases, you can see food sensitivity. Yes, all sorts of things, really. Dreams can also be an interesting thing to observe. I just had a little girl in my clinic who has really awful dreams. She dreams of death. So that's a really horrible thing, but it's a really good rubric to use in our softwares and books. So
so
yeah.
what we mean by that is that particular dreams might help us choose the remedy that's going to be most useful for her at the moment.
Yes, there's definitely a pattern there. And I think with every symptom, they don't stand alone. So just because someone has bad dreams, that doesn't mean that we are going to prescribe on the bad dreams. We are going to prescribe on the totality of symptoms. I think that's the most important thing with homeopathy.
So let's just talk about the totality of symptoms. We're talking about bringing this symptom, this symptom, this symptom, adding them all up, and then finding the remedy that has got all of those symptoms in the picture.
Yes, we match the remedy with the symptoms.
Okay,
That's
so
the
if we
remedy.
so if we have 6 people with OCD behaviours, they're not all going to get the same remedy, are they?
No, we are going to, during consultation, we always go into the different OCD symptoms that someone might have. So for some people, that could be hoarding, organizing things in a certain way. For others, it could be certain habits, certain words they keep repeating. Um, Sometimes it's very ritualistic, like they need to repeat a certain sentence, or they need their family members to repeat certain things to them for them to be able to carry on with things.
We
So it's
have
different in every case. Yeah.
we have a lot of fears and anxieties coming up in these type of symptoms, don't we?
Yes, I think fear is the underlying cause because really what's happening is brain inflammation. So if your brain is inflamed, if your brain tissue is targeted by your immune system, that's essentially what's happening with PANS and PANDAS sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. Um, then you're going to feel really fearful. You're going to feel attacked.
Let's just talk then about a remedy, for instance, Baryta Carb. What might take us to have a look at Baryta Carb and that nervousness, the shyness when out and about, and the fear caused by loud noises and things like that. Their interactions with people might be very different than Stramonium, which is also another huge fear remedy.
Yes, the Baryta carb is a more shy presentation, very anxious, more inwards. Stramonium has the tendency to lash out
Yeah.
and defend themselves. Um, I think it's in the Stramonium picture as well to bare their teeth. I don't quite remember, to be honest, but I think that's in there. So that's quite interesting for a plant remedy, isn't it? It's something that
Yes,
I associate more with an animal remedy.
you're right. You're right. And then let's talk about lachesis, because that has got huge jealousy and anger and loquacity, hasn't it? So again, a very different remedy, looking at the reaction that somebody might have when they're going through particular areas.
Yes, legacy siblings can be quite difficult, I would say. Yes, I was definitely a legacy sibling when I was a child. Very loquacious, and I just couldn't understand why is my little brother taking all the toys from me? Because I was a bit older, and I think as an older sibling, most of us go through this problem of giving our toys, passing them down to the smaller sibling, to the younger sibling. Yeah, so we see that often with client cases, with child cases, that kind of jealousy
Yeah,
and of maliciousness as well.
yeah,
But it's again coming from a place of sensitivity.
yeah.
It's not coming from anywhere inherently malicious. It's just
No,
defense mechanism, it's just a reaction, it's just part of learning and evolving as a child.
I think that's the one thing that homeopathy has really taught us, that actually naughty children don't want to be naughty. It when they have a remedy and they are so much calmer, you realize what anguish they must have been in
Yeah.
of that behavior. That behavior is not on purpose. It seems as if it is on purpose, but really, once you've seen homeopathy working, it changes your whole perspective, doesn't it, of behavior?
Yes, I think what homeopathy does is that it brings us closer to our center. So we might be very reactive when we are not in our center because certain parts of our psyche are activated.
Yeah.
We are in defense or we are in vulnerability, but not so much in self, in center. And I think homeopathy has that way of like very gently just nudging us towards our true self.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting. That's a lovely way to put it, Anna. Um, So let's talk for a moment about OCD and a couple of remedies that you would be looking at for those sort of behavioural. And then if I can ask you a little bit about detox, about what is homeopathic detox and how would we go about that. So first of all, do any remedies come to mind that you're considering when you see OCD behaviours?
Yes, one of my go-tos is arsenicum. It's just such a classic OCD remedy.
and it's
Yeah.
so full of fear, and
Yeah.
it is so rigid, isn't it? And it's quite an outgoing remedy. You know, they know their mind, and they know if you're doing things in the right order,
Yeah.
and they definitely are going to tell you when it is the wrong order.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. They can be a little bit controlling.
Yes.
Um, and what's another word for it in the repertory? I don't quite remember. I think dictatorial,
Yes.
and there's a few others,
Yes.
but it's in that it's in that category. Dogmatic is another good word. So yeah, these are all words that we use as rubrics in our repertories, and arsenicum is under every single one of them. So yeah, that can be an OCD, a good OCD remedy. And then also really like to use carcinosin.
And
Um,
that's a completely different picture, isn't it? But it is huge with OCD.
yes, and I like to use carcinosin both for children and their parents as well, because it has in its picture that overextending of yourself.
Yes.
So it can be really supportive for parents.
Yes.
When they are giving so much for their child so they can heal, so they can feel more whole,
Mhm.
and in that process might be neglecting themselves, and they need to be very organized. So they can be a little bit obsessive compulsive about their schedule or cleanliness in the home, cleaning the child's diet. And the children are the same, they have their OCD behaviors around food, around certain areas in the room, how they look like and how they order their toys and everything. So that can be very carcinosin.
Yes, you're right. And also that um, hates to be late.
Yes, yes.
Walking into a classroom because you're late, it would be absolutely terrifying for some children and not at all for others. And we,
Yeah, carcinosin is definitely a more pleasing kind of
yeah,
remedy. People pleasing is a really big thing in the carcinosin picture.
yeah,
So children who benefit from this remedy, they might be really good students.
yes,
Might be
exactly.
really on it with their studies, but internally they are really suffering from that. Whereas arsenicum, I think it can go both ways. They might be really good at school, they might not be so good at school. They are a bit more outwardly
Mhm.
in their expression.
Yes, yes, they're usually quite confident, but then the fear takes over, doesn't it? Um, okay, let's talk about detoxing, because what we want to find out is how can homeopathy be used for detoxing? What is detoxing? What are we detoxing? Why would it be useful?
I think we can detox anything and everything. Especially nowadays that our systems are just so overloaded with environmental toxins, pesticides, herbicides, like it's just everywhere. It's in the water, in the food. Um, and yes, like I myself get a little bit paranoid about these kind of things as well. And then I remind myself that, everyone is going through this. We are going through this as a collective. And there must be some ways, for example, homeopathy, that can be helpful along the way. Um, and yes, I think the most common things that people are looking to detox nowadays are um, glyphosate, mold, parasites, pharmaceuticals, obviously, um, such as the contraceptive pill, for example. That's a really big topic. Um, but yeah, there's so many others. There are
Many
just so
things.
many.
And I know that we are, people often come to us and say, okay, I need this detoxing. And we quite often say, I need to talk to you because I need to understand how your liver's working and what your liver's holding in order to know what you know,
Yes.
if we need detoxing and what we need detoxing. So we would be asking effectively for symptoms, wouldn't we? For things that are out of balance in order to understand. So even if we decide, okay, I understand that you've had this, this and this, and you want to detox, as a homeopath, we would want to be seeing how the liver is working and then take it from there. So that's why we go through that health story effectively, so that we can understand where your body is stuck.
Yes, yes, because I think when people have a need for detox, they feel a bit toxic. And
Yes.
that could be for many different reasons. It could be emotional, spiritual as well in some ways. The liver is often affected, the kidney is often affected. I believe that we can all benefit from a bit of detox every now and then, but I think the people who really feel that they need to detox, they probably intuit that right. And then what we do during a consultation is that, first of all, again, we take the whole picture, we take all the symptoms. We don't just go, okay, so you want a mold detox, so these are the remedies for that. Obviously, there are specific remedies that we can use for mold detox, but we still look at the totality of the symptoms. So we might prescribe a remedy that is a very classical, overarching remedy for the whole picture, that covers their unique liver, kidney symptoms without even naming them necessarily. You
No.
know, like don't just go like, okay, this is a liver symptom,
Yeah.
because we don't really need to know. We
Uh,
can benefit from knowing, but we don't have to know. And then another important thing with detox is that the body needs to be ready for it.
yes.
So we don't want to go really high potency, lots of different remedies immediately. We want to make sure that the body is strong enough. So we look at, okay, do they urinate regularly? What's the color of the urine, the smell of the urine? Does that look healthy? Because if not, then the kidneys might need support,
Yeah.
might need a remedy that can cover those symptoms. Do they have regular bowel movements? Do they sweat? Do they breathe properly? All those detox pathways need to be open.
Yes, so we need to understand that if we're going to give a remedy that brings everything up out of the liver, you've got to have enough energy to be excreting those toxins out of the body. So in order to do that, you would be getting a homeopathic remedy that is like a constitutional remedy, a strengthening remedy for you. You'd be getting the detox remedy effectively, and probably then an organ support remedy to make sure that you're not going to flush the toxins into your body and they stay there, but you're going to be excreting them and actually letting them go and releasing them. Because really, when we're healthy, our body does this anyway. It's only when we're overloaded or we get stuck that the body stops doing what it should be doing. And often it's just something that we need to set the body up again so that it's able to do this naturally as it always does.
Yes, and I really love how you describe that with the three different types of remedies, because that's exactly how I work. I don't know about other homeopaths, but I like one overarching big remedy that covers mental, emotional, spiritual symptoms as well as physical symptoms. And then I like to give organ support remedies, or they also call them drainage remedies.
Yeah.
And then I like to give, different totopathic or isopathic remedies as well.
So that would be the actual substance that we're looking at detoxing. So that might be mold if we're looking at doing a mold detox, or antibiotics if we're doing that. So we can work in many different ways, but the most important thing here is to understand how this is going to be so important in your overall return to health journey to journey back to good health.
Exactly, because you can do detox with classical homeopathy as well. There's no reason why you're not able to do that. I like to use the example of lycopodium. Like, it has both liver and kidney related symptoms. And I just find that absolutely beautiful, because that's pretty much all you need from a good detox remedy. So there's no reason why you couldn't just use a single classical prescription. It's just not how I tend to work personally.
Yes, and I think that most of us, have got classical training and then have got additional training on the top of that. And every case is different. And when we come in, I'm always saying it's absolutely fine for one remedy when you've got a 6-year-old phosphorus child that just does one remedy and you never need to see them again. It just puts everything back into place. But by and large, we live in a very complex world now, in a very toxified environment, and as you said, we don't know exactly what we've picked up where, because we don't know the origins of our food. We don't know, and we're finding out now that even you're buying organic food, be careful, because if you're buying it in certain places, they're still spraying it so it looks greener in the shop. No, we we're not in control of those aspects.
Yeah, we have to use all the tools available to us and all the recent research in homeopathy. But I also find that, like, homeopathy can be really humbling as a practitioner. Like, if you're saying that, like, I am like, oh, I'm not a classical homeopath. There are certainly some clients when I need a classical prescription. And
Yeah.
I wonder if that also happens to classical homeopath. Like, let's say 90% of the time they work with classical prescriptions, but every so often they have a client that requires a non-classical approach. So I think, yeah, it can definitely be humbling that way. You can't just put yourself in one fixed category.
No,
Um,
no.
because life is just going to say, I'm going to test you now,
Yeah.
see what we react.
And often what a client brings to you shows you where you need to go.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that I think we just learn so much from actually seeing people and understanding the whole health picture.
Definitely. I think as homeopathy, we come across people we would never come across otherwise.
Yes.
Our
Yeah,
clients are just teaching us so much.
exactly. Anna, thank you so much. It's been lovely to talk to you, and it's really opened up loads more discussion. Actually, I think we're going to have to sort of continue this, because we've touched on quite a lot of information, but it's kind of opened up areas that we definitely need to explore in more detail. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna, for coming and joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Next week, I'm going to be talking to Lisa Robbins, and Lisa's going to be telling us a little bit about her novel. Now, her novel has been inspired by her experiences with homeopathy and with grief. So it's going to be a great insight into a different creative way of learning about how to navigate life. I look forward to seeing you then. I do hope you've enjoyed these episodes, and I do hope you can subscribe to our channels. Now, there are various ways for you to listen to our podcast or watch it on video on YouTube. So whether it's iTunes, Spotify, or YouTube, please do subscribe, and please do leave us a review. If you leave us a review on these platforms, then more people will see our podcast. We just want more people to share the joy of homeopathy. It's a choice that everybody should know about. Please do everything you can to help us help more people.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode and look forward to listening to our next one. Please don't forget to follow our podcast on your chosen channel, and please do leave us a review so we can continue to share homeopathy with as many people as possible. If you do have any questions, please do reach out to us on any of our social platforms mentioned in the show notes. We at Homeopathy 24/7 hope to empower you on your natural health journey.